This is every single unusual item that drops from the Crownfall Treasure 2. This is part 2 of the 3-part series, one video for each of the 3 Crownfall treasures that can drop unusual items. If you don't know, unusual items can drop from these 3 Crownfall treasures. They are a 1 in 300 chance for any unbox, and the unusual item will drop as an extra item alongside the original set. You will know if you unbox an unusual because it will display a special screen and give you an extra item. You cannot get unusuals by unbundling sets which you have already unboxed. In this video, I'm going to display every item on its own with each effect, and then display a custom set that I've made to display a real-world example of how these may look once they're in the hands of collectors come April. As all of these items are market and trade restricted until the end of Crownfall, which is currently listed as a market lock until April 18th, 2025. I go over this in my first video, but there are 2 effects. The more desirable effect is Raven Blight, which is a gold glow around the item with a particle system of gold feathers falling behind the hero as you move, and Feather Fall, which is a red and dark blue tinted version of that same effect. But in practice, it's far less visible in almost all circumstances, as the feathers being dark blue, it makes them far harder to see on most backgrounds. However, in some cases, the red and blue outline on the item can be preferred, but it really depends on the hero and it depends on the item. Both of the effects are good, but the gold is better. Now, this treasure is interesting and definitely has some cool items. I think Puck firstly has unusual wings, which importantly can be mixed with the Dragon's Hoard unusual headpiece. And any Crownfall unusuals that can be mixed with Dragon's Hoard is a pretty good thing, because the Dragon's Hoard effect Gold Glow is very similar to Raven Blight. So you can make an unusual set which will cover most of the heroes' models for heroes like Puck, who have a Crownfall unusual as well as a Dragon's Hoard unusual. Skywrath is strange. Personally, I think the item itself is really ugly. The effect is strong, but it has a bit of a strange clustering on the top. There's like a ring of particles around the top of the staff, so this is more visible on the red effect than the gold, but I think it's a bit strange. Anyway, the gold effect is much stronger, and obviously there's a ton of things you can mix this with, namely the gold style of the Arcana, which looks incredible with this unusual. However, the red effect does have some awesome combo sets with the Crimson Immortals that you can get for this hero, and the Crimson Immortals are the saving grace for a lot of these unusuals in Featherfall. So even though the Featherfall items for some heroes don't look great, the heroes that have Crimson Immortals to mix with it can end up looking pretty good. This is Tinker's first real unusual. There is a bugged item from a while ago which was a cash item that dropped in unusual quality, but without any effect at all. It's a strange item and it's unique in its uselessness alone. That item is collectible simply because of its bugged quality. However, the real unusual this time is in the laser slot. I can see an argument for both effects, but clearly I think the gold is better again. So Pugna is the first Crownfall unusual I actually dropped. I got this item in Raven Blight, the gold effect, and it's a fine item, but the set is a Pugna set, so they all look incredibly similar, much like Jakiro. I think that this item particularly has quite a strong effect on the Featherfall version. The red outline is quite visible, whereas on other items it blends into the item more, so I think both effects here are quite good. However, there is an opportunity with this golden effect for an absolutely insane custom set. With the golden Pugna bundle, which last sold for around $6,000 US, alongside this you could make a 6k unusual custom loadout, and the unusual replaces probably the least important part of the gold bundle, so it looks about as crazy as a Pugna set possibly could. It's perhaps among one of the most expensive unusual combo sets possible in the game. Naga Siren's item is one of those very disappointing ones, in that there is not a matching offhand unusual to match the main item. It's just the main weapon slot. However, the new cash set for Naga does replace her offhand slot with a shield, which will balance out the hero more if you just have the one unusual effect, so that's a great option as well. But the effect here is fine, but this is one of the stronger arguments for the red effect also. The gold is still very good, but the red can match Naga's other items really well. I don't have much to say about Omniknight. It's his weapon slot as usual. The gold effect is substantially better than the red. Almost all of his cosmetics match the gold style, as do all of the immortals, but again the saving grace for the red effect are the crimson items that Omniknight has, so I think you can still make a really crazy good set in either colour. Kotl has an unusual staff, much like Frostivus, but his staff in this set is much bigger physically, so the effect is quite large, and the gold effect is much better than the red, but the red outline is mostly lost on the hero with that much complexity in its items. With Kotl having such detailed horses and headdresses behind the items, the red unusual gets mostly lost. The AA set is one of the few Crownfall treasures which drop in 2 separate slots, so the head and the shoulders can both drop in unusual, but you will only get 1 per drop, so it's possible to mix both effects or combine them for double the particles. They both look good, and you can mix them with the Frostivus unusuals in the arms. But AA has a ton of opportunity to make a pretty crazy unusual loadout. Hoodwonk has an unusual weapon. I think most Crownfall unusuals are the weapon slot actually. But the hero is so tiny, and therefore so is the weapon, that I think this is probably the worst item in the chest. Even though it's a rare, I don't think it's very good. I'd be happy to miss out on this one. Don't think it's worth buying unless you really play the hero. I think you can see both effects almost completely vanish as soon as you put a set on top of them. Zeus is really tough. Heroes without weapons of any kind have struggled to have like a properly stylized unusual, although I think that this one is okay, and I don't really have any ideas how I would improve it. You can't use the head slot, which is a typical backup when a weapon isn't available, because it would conflict with his arcana. The braces would be absolutely tiny, and this item looks pretty good with or without the arcana. I've shown it both ways, but there's something that makes me wish that the Zeus item was somehow better, but I can't possibly figure out how to make that happen. Now, these last items I have already shown before in my first Crownfall Unusuals video from the week that these treasures came out. Once paired with other items, these unusuals for Drow look absolutely awesome, and luckily they've slowly come down in price. They were absolutely incredible how much people were paying for these when they first came out. These are marketable right now, whereas all the others I have shown so far have not been yet marketable or tradable. Both effects on the Drow bow are worth owning, and it's important to note that the Drow bow does actually have 2 separate styles, and one of the styles matches the red effect quite well, but it does unfortunately conflict with her arcana. Finally, the Ursa Unusual is actually on the Claws slot. It would seem at a first glance like the Frostivus Unusual is in the same slot, but that actually uses the arms. So you can mix them together, and alongside those two, you could actually mix in the original Alpine Stalker set pieces, and you can get a pretty crazy set price-wise. But there's definitely some value here to Ursa players for a high-tier loadout. Thank you so much to my YouTube members for continuing to support these videos. We're doing a bunch of giveaways throughout the month of December on the Dota 2 Items and Info Discord, so if you're interested in any of that, check out the link in the description to join 1,300 other members on the Discord, where you can discuss or share Dota 2 items and win some cool stuff while you're there.